Here on Wham Baam Dashcam, we've shown you over 1,000 dashcam videos sent in by our fans, and we serve up 20 new ones every week. Today we're showcasing some of the craziest clips we've ever featured, so buckle up for Wham Baam Dashcam's Worst Drivers of Texas, Volume 1. Jonathan was on his way to a restaurant to meet family for dinner and was less than half a mile away. Suddenly, he saw a car flipping and rolling in the middle of the highway. The car had made contact with a Jeep, but Jonathan isn't sure what happened exactly due to a barrier blocking his view. Neither driver was seriously injured, and a 4-month-old in the backseat of the car was also fine. Josh was getting ready to turn right onto a road after exiting a car wash. When he pulled up next to a Chevy Tahoe, the driver proceeded to turn in front of him and clip the front corner of his Ford Mustang. The lady driving the Tahoe said she couldn't see Josh next to her. Employees from the car wash let Josh take a look at their security camera footage, which he used for his insurance claim. The Tahoe driver's insurance provider paid to fix the over $10,000 in damage. By the way, if you want to see more security camera footage, be sure to check out our newest channel, Wham Bam Security Cam. Rhea was on her way home after an overnight work shift. As she approached a main road where traffic from the right is not allowed to turn left, she was suddenly faced with a driver cutting through her lane to make an illegal turn. Rhea told us that driver had just gone through a stoplight where they could have turned left and reached their destination faster. Kennedy was headed home when he watched the driver of a black car proceed through a stop sign even though a white pickup truck had the right of way. Kennedy stopped to make sure everyone was okay and cleared debris from the road. He snapped these photos while waiting for first responders to arrive. Morgan was passing a Honda Civic when the driver suddenly turned into the side of his Honda Accord without warning, sending him out of control. After skidding down the road and jumping a curb, Morgan's car slammed into a tree, obliterating both it and his car before he finally came to rest in a motel parking lot. Morgan said the insurance company is taking their sweet time getting him a repair quote, so he's hired a lawyer to make sure everything goes smoothly. Morgan told us that drivers in a college town are expected to be bad, but San Marcos is on another level. I'm just wondering what these two were thinking as they witnessed this Honda-on-Honda violence. Allie was on her way to work when she pulled up behind another car at a red light. Check out what happened just as she took her foot off the brake to continue. The driver of the other car then took off, leading Allie on a brief chase before she was forced to pull over by the fact that her car was leaking coolant. Allie called the police, and they took an hour to respond. The other driver told Allie she couldn't provide her insurance info because it was on her phone, which she didn't have. Thankfully, the cops were able to look up her insurance info. She admitted to looking away from the road to change the radio station, but later she lied to her insurance provider about everything that had happened. After seeing the video, her insurance provider found her at fault and paid $6,800 to repair Allie's vehicle. Allie says, if you don't have a camera, I highly recommend getting one. Josh was driving his Freightliner semi-truck when the driver of a Toyota SUV began merging in front of him. Josh estimates the Toyota was going about 35 miles per hour when it began merging, and Josh immediately sounded his air horn. When he slammed on the brakes, it caused the rear axle to release from its locked position. Getting the axle put back into place required a tow truck with a winch and cost Josh $500. Of course, the SUV driver just took off. Josh told us he's retiring this year after 20 years of driving, and he really wants to maintain his spotless record. Steve's wife, Bree, was preparing to turn left from a lane where traffic is allowed to turn left or continue straight. The driver of a pickup truck next to her went straight even though his lane is only for left turns. Both drivers pulled over and exchanged information, and a police officer arrived and conducted a collision investigation. Amazingly, the pickup driver denied responsibility, claiming Bree had turned into the side of his truck. Once they showed his insurance provider the dashcam video, they accepted responsibility and paid for the repairs. This submitter was driving his Mustang GT when he passed a Tesla Model S. Evidently, the Tesla driver didn't appreciate that, so he accelerated and chased our submitter for a while before blowing past him on the shoulder.
Oh, okay.
Our submitter pointed out that the Tesla passed him at over 120 miles per hour. He didn't mention how fast he was going, but you can see it for yourself down below. Our submitter thinks the Tesla driver was being reckless. What do you think? Let us and our submitter know your thoughts in the comments below. Amber was driving on a Texas highway when she watched a pickup driver fail to notice traffic slowing down and rear-end a Subaru SUV. It sure looks like the pickup driver was on the brakes the whole time, but they still failed to avoid a collision. Amber kept going, only realizing later that she'd captured the accident on her dashcam. Joe was pulling a 40-foot trailer loaded with a 9,000-pound skid steer loader when an oncoming driver nearly hit him as he turned toward the interstate. At first glance, it might look like Joe is in the wrong here, but actually, the other driver has a yield sign. This means he's supposed to allow turning traffic to go in front of him, even if it means he has to stop and wait. Thankfully, Joe's brakes saved the day, and he was able to continue without further incident. John was driving home when a semi-truck in the left lane suddenly merged into him, sending him spinning out of control and into a ditch. John didn't even know what had happened until he reviewed his dashcam footage. A responding officer spoke with the trucker and he immediately admitted fault. Sadly, John's Elantra was totaled. Gibby started his day by getting honked at and tailgated by an SUV driver who didn't like having to yield the right-of-way while making a left turn across traffic. Yes, Gibby had the right-of-way since he wasn't crossing traffic and the SUV wasn't turning into the correct lane anyway. Still, Gibby pulled into a parking lot to let the road rager by rather than doing anything to escalate. Gibby told us he almost bought a Tesla just for the built-in cameras, but he got a dashcam instead after we launched Wham Baam Dashcam. Sweet! We can't wait for more submissions. Justin was on lunch break between college classes when he stopped at a yield sign to wait for traffic. When he started inching forward, he got Hyundai bumped by a Sonata. At first, the Hyundai driver blamed Justin for the collision, saying he shouldn't have stopped. Thankfully, there were no injuries and no significant damage to either vehicle. Here's another submission from our good friend Aash, and before you correct my pronunciation of his name like so many others have, this is literally the way he told us to pronounce his name. Anyway, Aash had just merged into the leftmost lane when a pickup driver turned across traffic and into Aash's lane. Aash swerved hard into the middle lane to avoid a collision while honking at the other driver. Luckily, no contact was made, and his Ram 1500 Rebel wasn't damaged. Watch what happened to David after he pulled up to a stop sign. In before someone leaves a comment about David being rammed by a ram. Subscribe if I just stole your joke. The driver of the black pickup claimed she hadn't seen David's Ford Fusion. Thankfully, nobody was injured, and the two parties were able to resolve the incident without involving any first responders. After sending his dashcam footage to her insurance provider, they accepted responsibility and paid $6,800 to fix David's car. They told him that without the video, they would have assigned him 50% of the blame, and he would have had no evidence to prove otherwise. He told us he has dashcams in all his vehicles, just in case. Freddy was headed home from work when he was confronted by a pickup truck coming straight toward him and missing a wheel. As the pickup truck passed him, Freddy noticed a damaged Lexus appeared to be in pursuit. He turned around and followed both vehicles until they came to a stop in an alley. When he spoke with the Lexus driver, he found out the pickup driver had rear-ended them before hitting 2 other vehicles and driving off. While he was still talking to them, 3 cop cars arrived. When officers approached, the pickup driver floored the gas, but the truck was stuck. Freddy said the cops pulled him out of the truck and arrested him. He also told us the pickup driver was intoxicated. Thankfully, nobody was injured in this wild incident, and the guilty party will hopefully be held responsible for his actions. Mike was leaving his workplace when he saw a black SUV trying to get out of a turn-only lane. As he drove up behind them, they turned off their turn signal, so he assumed they were just going to turn instead. Nope. They kept going straight while the car in the turn lane next to them turned across their lane and the 2 vehicles collided. Mike stopped to make sure everyone was okay and to give the driver of the car his dashcam footage. When Mike followed up the next day, he was told the SUV driver claimed the car had merged into him without looking. The driver of the car was very grateful for the footage, proving he wasn't at fault. WeWake was driving down the Lyndon B. Johnson freeway when he watched 2 other drivers merge into the same lane at the same time. Thankfully, the driver of the Toyota noticed the approaching SUV and hit the brakes to avoid a collision, and it sounds like both drivers honked at each other just for good measure. Christian was on his way to pick up his little sisters from school when he watched a pickup driver tap a white car while turning onto the road across traffic. It seems like the pickup driver didn't see the car when he pulled out, and he ended up hitting the car's rear wheel and sending it spinning. Christian turned around to check on the car driver and give him his dashcam footage. Hopefully it helped him find the pickup driver because he just drove off without even stopping to see if the car driver was okay. Gio spotted a whole new level of rolling coal while driving his F-150 Lightning. He was driving cross-country from California to Georgia and had just left a charging station when he encountered a semi-truck on fire. The semi blew through a red light before speeding down a feeder road. Gio called 911 and told them what he'd witnessed, but they never called him back. Sometimes the cops are in the right place at the right time. Other times, people get in their way at the wrong time. Bob was driving when he noticed several police vehicles responding to an emergency. As they approached an intersection, the driver of a car panicked and hit the brakes right in front of the lead police vehicle. The police SUV slid to a stop but couldn't avoid tapping the rear bumper of the car. Bob didn't stop, and I'm guessing he didn't feel the need to call 911 either. Logan was going around 50 miles per hour when a Jeep driver pulled out in front of him. Logan made an evasive maneuver and swerved around the SUV. Thankfully, no contact was made. Our next submitter wasn't so lucky. Antonio had just dropped off his brother at his girlfriend's house. 5 minutes later, a black pickup truck sideswiped his Jeep Wrangler. Antonio quickly got control of his Jeep and avoided hitting anyone else. Both drivers pulled over, and when Antonio told the other driver he was calling the police, he fled the scene, making this a hit and run. Antonio considered chasing him, but he thought better of it and called the police instead. By reviewing his dashcam footage, he was able to provide them with the offender's license plate number. Sadly, it's been a few months now with no update from the police. Thankfully, the damage to Antonio's Jeep is fairly minor and he wasn't injured. Shout out to his brothers Hector and Fernando. Catherine was driving home from work and was waiting in traffic at a red light. Suddenly, she spotted a Jeep driver finding a very creative way around traffic. The Jeep driver must have missed the signs telling people to keep off the grass.
Wham! Bam, we got a Patreon man. Please support the show.